Well, hello, and welcome to this Alabama adventure. Although this Alabama adventure is a story that I got from someone in the Pacific Northwest, either Oregon or Washington State, one or the other. I'm not sure where this lady was at, but she contacted me with a story, not about Black Panthers like we're having down here. She was talking about a puma or a mountain lion. We do have a few cougars around here. I guess that's the same thing as a mountain lion. I'm not sure exactly, but I do have some pictures that people have sent me over the years of cougars that they've captured on game cameras here in the state of Alabama. Uh, this one right here is a picture of a cougar that came from up around Talladega a few years ago. It was stalking this deer undoubtedly, and I call this picture the last moments of life because I'm sure this mountain lion jumped on this deer and killed it shortly after this picture was made. But anyway, before we get started on the story, as I always like to do, I'd like to tell you from the tail end of the Appalachian Mountain Chain in the heart of the South, this is Alabama Adventures. And before we do get started with this video, I have something I want to show you. A friend of mine, very good friend of mine, Paula, from up in Decatur, Alabama, sent me a little something here the other day, and I want to show you what it is. I won't call her whole name because she may not want her whole name on here. We went up there and done some seminars with a paranormal group that she's in. She over the last week she sent me a pair of Bigfoot socks. I want to hold those up so you can see them. That's something I hadn't seen before, and it's from the Bigfoot Sock Company. So anyway, I would just want to show you those right quick. I hadn't even taken them out of the holder there yet to put them on. I just got them the other day, and wanted to show you them before I wear them and stretch them and that type of stuff. But anyway, I sure do appreciate Paula taking time to send me these Bigfoot socks. Now, as you can see, I've had to break out my flannel shirt, and it's getting kind of cool. It's the last week of October of 2018 here in central Alabama, and the weather has really cooled down today. It was a pretty nice day yesterday. I was wearing shorts and a short sleeve shirt, and then got up this morning. It was pretty cool, so I had to break out my blue jeans again and a good warm flannel shirt. Gets me building a fire here pretty soon to try to keep warm once again, heck, over the winter. Anyway, I want to tell you this story that this lady sent me. She, as I said, she is from Washington or Oregon. It was undoubtedly in the late fall or the winter of the year when this happened. She said it happened several years ago before camcorders, phones with cameras on them became popular. Said she wished she had had a video of this, of what all happened this particular afternoon. But anyway, back several years ago, we didn't have as many cameras with, like I said, telephones with cameras on them. I'll think about what I'm saying in a minute. Anyway, I've read this. I'm trying to remember it so I can tell it to you as she told it to me. She said she liked to go exploring, riding back roads of the mountains and the hills up there in the Pacific Northwest. And that's what she was doing this particular afternoon. She said the roads were kind of dicey. So I take that means it had a little snow, a little ice here from place to place. Because I'll tell you about that in just a minute. She looked for a place to turn around later on in the story. And because the roads were in this condition, she decided not to get off the pavement. But anyway, what happened, she was riding down the road, and she said she went around a pretty sharp curve up there in the mountainous area up there. And as she went around this curve, she slowed down. And as she slowed down, in front of her just a little ways off of the side of the hill or the mountain, whatever it was, this mountain lion jumped in the road in front of her and just stood there. Said it didn't try to run on across the road or anything. Said it just came out of the woods and jumped out into the road and just stood there looking at her. So said she stopped a few feet from it. Said she didn't want to hit it, didn't want to run over it. And anyway, said this thing just kept looking at her a little bit and said in just a few moments it began walking toward her in the truck, and said she did have the window down a little ways, but said she rolled it on up to where it would only be open about a inch and a half or so to just let a little fresh air in. So it must not have been real cold that afternoon with her having the window down about halfway, or either she was a pretty tough explorer that liked to get out in the elements and feel the cold air blowing on you as you ride down the road, as I do sometimes. But anyway, said this thing walked on up to the truck and looked at her, and said then it walked on past it, and said she thought it was going on down the road, leaving from where she was, but said all of a sudden this thing jumped into the bed of the truck. And said it walked around back there for a little bit, and said she looked up in the mirror to kind of see what it was doing to keep an eye on it, and said it was just walking around. Said it finally it walked up to the back glass and kind of put its face up against the glass and was looking at her in there. So she turned around in her seat and looks at it, and they're just looking at each other for a little bit. And said then this thing kind of backs up and jumps up on the top of the truck, jumps up on the roof. Okay, from there it walks around and around like a cat usually does whenever they're trying to get comfortable and situated in a place to lay down. And said that that's what the cat just walked around and around there for. It had made its circle around the roof of the truck a few times. It decided to lay down, and said she heard it when it laid down, and she didn't know what it was doing up there on the roof of the truck because she couldn't see it. But anyway, said in just a few minutes where she had her window cracked, said this cat hung its head over the side of the truck and was looking in the window at her, and said she was reached in the glove box and pulled out a 357 because she didn't know what it was fixing to do, or could it break the glass there or whatever. But anyway, she said she kept the 357 in her hand to just make her feel safe. Anyway, while this thing was watching her, and said it just they just looked at each other for a few minutes, and said she was just looking this thing face to face. Said after a few more moments, said finally the cat, she guessed, got relaxed. It pulled its head back up on top of the truck. It got relaxed, and said it actually slid across the windshield and slid onto the hood. And said it had just kept laying there on the hood. And after I read this and have thought about it, I guess since the weather was cold and there was probably snow and ice on the road and in the woods from the way she had talked, the cat was probably cold, and I guess when it got on this warm hood, it just felt good. And she said it continued to lay there, but it started taking a bath. It started licking his paws and his legs and that type of stuff. And said she sat there and sat there and said this thing just made itself at home on the hood of her truck. And said she knew she had to be getting along. She wanted to get in home before dark. Now I don't know exactly what time of afternoon all this was happening. She didn't give an exact time on it, and she may have had a pretty good ways to go to get back home. But said she wanted to get home before dark. So said she cranked the truck up, and that didn't seem to bother this cougar. He just kept laying there on the hood of the truck, taking a bath. And she said she could tell that it was a male cougar at one point. But anyway, maybe it was the mating season or something. I don't know why he was a little braver than the normal for like jumping on a truck and just being so laid back and relaxed on the hood of this particular truck. But anyway, said she cranked up, and he just continued to lay there and continued to take a bath, and said she began moving a little bit farther forward, and this didn't seem to bother him either. And said she got up to maybe about 15 miles an hour, and she hit the brakes real hard. All right, now when she hit the brakes, of course the cat slid off the hood onto the ground, and she said that he caught on his feet when he went off the hood out there, and said this whole encounter from the time that he had jumped on the back of her truck in the bed back there till she had him to slide off the hood out there probably was about 10, maybe 15 minutes. A pretty good little while. She said this cat showed absolutely no fear of her or the truck or of anything, but said whenever he hit the ground that he turned his back to her. He turned his back to the truck, and then he turned his head around to where he could look at her again, and said he did stand there for a few more minutes with his back turned looking, and said then all of a sudden he flicked his tail and walked off or started walking down the road. and said she put the truck in gear and followed along behind him. Said he sort of got up to a trot, not a real fast trot or a run or anything like that, but said he just kind of trotted down the road, and said she probably followed him a quarter of a mile down the road as after she had thrown him or after he had slid off the hood. And after she followed him for about a quarter of a mile, I may be repeating a little bit of stuff here, but I'm stopping the camera so I can check my notes and then restarting it. So that may be why I repeat something. If I do, you just have to overlook that. Just account it to the account that I'm getting old, and sometimes it takes me time to tell a story now. But anyway, she said after she had followed it about a quarter of a mile, that it did go off the road and ran across the ground a little ways, and they had been cutting some trees in this particular area, and that it jumped up on a stump a little ways in front of her. Said she slowed up again to look at it, and they both looked at each other as she went by. This thing standing on a stump, sort of out in the woods, looking at her as she went by. She said, although she was very nervous while all this was taking place, especially while the cat was so close to her, like looking in the window, said she really wasn't afraid of it for some reason. So it just sort of makes you wonder sometimes when people come in contact with wild animals like this. Sometimes you're not afraid of them. You feel a closeness, or I guess it's a oneness, is what the Indians talked about with the animals and nature that surrounds you sometimes. But anyway, she said she'd never had anything like this happen again. She'd never heard of anybody that had one to jump in the back of the truck and just make itself at home the way this one did. But anyway, that's story that I wanted to tell you there about a cougar. Not a cougar. Cougars are down here in Alabama sometimes, and in other parts of the country, or they may be up there in the Pacific Northwest. But she called it a puma and a mountain lion. And I did want to tell you something real quick about a cougar car. Let me show you a picture of a cougar car. Now this is a car that has been restored and is in very good condition. Many years ago, I know you in some of my other videos, you've heard me talk about working at the shirt factory that was here in town many years ago now. And a lot of people worked down there, made a lot of friends down there, got to know a lot of people down there, and still run into some of them today. There was this one particular lady that was a secretary down there. She was a real nice looking lady. She was very tall, and she had a brother that had a mobile home lot in Phoenix City, Alabama, and he sold new mobile homes down there, which back in the 1970s a lot of people could afford and were buying at the time. But anyway, he sort of began to branch out, and he I'm not sure exactly how many. I know he had two used car lots later on, and he opened up one used car lot here in not here in up in Clay County. Clay County is just a few miles up the road, and we all think we all live in the same place. Clay and Randolph, most people in this particular little community area, we all consider that we all live in the same place. But anyway, he opened up a used car lot up in Clay County, and his sister that I was telling you about, she worked up there on Saturdays selling cars for him. And well, somebody else worked there during the week. He was at the main mobile home lot all the time during the week and on the weekends too. But anyway, what I want to tell you about a Cougar is a Cougar, a 60s model Cougar is a car that I have always liked and always wish I owned and everything. And I had a chance one time, but sometimes you're just financially not able to afford what you need and what you want and that type of stuff. And that's what happened to me up there one day. Somebody told me they had been by, or it could have been her. I don't forgot. This was back in the late 1970s when this happened. Told me that there was three Mercury Cougars sitting on the lot up there. They were all the same color, looked identical. It was just different year models. So as soon as I got off of work that afternoon, I went up there and looked at them, and they were priced pretty normal, pretty reasonable for that particular time period. I'll tell you what they were priced in a minute. You ain't gonna believe this, but anyway, this keep in mind this was around 1979 whenever I saw them. 79 or maybe 1980, somewhere right along in there. But anyway, I told this lady, I was trying to remember her name, that seemed like her name was Carol. But anyway, she was a secretary there. So the next day when I went into work, I told her, I asked her, I said, are you going to be up there on the car lot Saturday working? She said, oh, yeah. And I said, you got 3 Cougars up there. I said, I want to come look at them and see if we can't get a deal up on one or something. And of course, she and a lot of people knew that I always liked that particular type of car, early model Cougar. So anyway, that's what I did that Saturday morning. I went up there and looked at them, and they weren't in perfect condition. They were like you would buy a, say right now, maybe a 10-year-old used car. They needed washing. They needed cleaning from one end to the other. Really, just a car that had been used, looked like every day, and somebody had just traded these 3 cars in, or maybe they'd got them on the lot and put them all together or whatever. But anyway, I went up there and looked at them. They were a Cougar, a green, I call it. You used to see green Cougars a lot with a black vinyl top. All of them had air conditioning, AM, FM radio. I don't know if they even have radios in cars now. I hadn't looked at new cars in so long. But anyway, went up there and looked at these 3 cars. And they were all priced from about $550 up to about $750. And there was 3 of them. There was a 67, a 68, and a 69. Of course, the 69 was priced the highest, and the 67 was priced the lowest. And I really wanted one of these cars, and I should have bought it. I could have probably afforded that back then. But I let it slip by, and I thought about it, I guess, every day since I didn't get these cars. Anyway, talked to her there for a little while, and I took them all down the road one at a time and test drove them, liked them every one, and brought them back. And there's what I asked her. I said, what would you just take for all the cars if I just bought all 3? Of course, I knew that there was no way that I could buy all 3, but because that would have been, it would have been somewhere around $1,600-$1,700 for all 3 of them, and I just wasn't at a point then to where I could spend that much money, especially on 3 cars. And I lived at home with my parents back then, and there wouldn't have been any way that I would have come home and told my dad, "You're going to have to go with me to help me bring in a couple of cars I bought." If I'd have come home with 3 cars, ooh, Mama would have never. The stuff would have hit the fan. But anyway, if I'd have come home with 3 cars, no matter what I gave for them. But anyway, I talked to Carol up there for a little while, and as I said, we were real good friends from work and that type of stuff. And when I tell you what I could have bought these things for and what they're worth now, of course, if they're restored, they're worth a whole lot more money than just one that's been run on the road every day. But she said if you want all 3 of them, said we'll take $1,200. That would have been about $400 a piece, and I missed my chance at having a Cougar car that I always wanted. I did later on have a 70, I think a 76 Cougar one time, and I really liked that car. But anyway, I just like the body style and the looks and the handling, the size, everything about like a 60s model Cougar. But that was the day that I missed my chance to have 3 Cougars that I had always dreamed of. But I guess with all that now, I guess I'd better bring this video to a close. That's one of my old tales from years ago that some folks enjoy hearing. It would have been nice if I'd had a place to put those cars, and of course you didn't know cars were going to be as high in value, older cars, as they are now once they are restored. A lot of them don't have to be restored and bring a big price. But anyway, just wanted to relate that story since we were talking about Cougars and Pumas and mountain lions. Didn't get to talk about Black Panthers too much today, but anyway. As I said before, I'm going to bring this video to a close. And if you like this video, I hope you give us a like. If you like what we're doing down here with our paranormal investigations, our stories, and our other videos, I hope you subscribe to the channel. I do want you to know that the Alabama Bigfoot Society is run completely out of pocket, and if you're in a position to where you can make a donation, it would be very much appreciated. All you have to do is to go on our website, alabamabigfootsociety.com, and right there on the front page you'll find a place to where you can make that donation. And I do want to thank all of you who have made a donation over the past few months. It has certainly come in handy and appreciated very much, especially with all the health problems and stuff that I have had lately. Anyway, let me see what else I am supposed to tell you. Let me say before I do leave, if you do have a 67 was my favorite Mercury Cougar. If you have one of those that you would like to donate to me just to see me drive, I would certainly appreciate that. Anyway, I guess I'd better get on out of here and bring this video to a close now. So anyway, I'll be looking for you around the next curve. And we'll see you next time on the next Alabama Adventure.